Much for your kind gesture. Uh, Speaking in front of this audience and being a resource person at Mumbai University is a privilege, and I am grateful from the bottom of my heart for this opportunity. So, if ma'am, you kindly give the permission, we can start with the session.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So, today's topic is about simple and multiple linear regression. This is the most basic form of machine learning. I mean, this is as basic as it can get. My experience is more or less on the deep learning side, but I readily agreed when I was told that this is the topic, because this is a chance for me also to refresh my fundamentals. So even though you don't use addition, subtraction, multiplication and division, those kind of basic mathematical operations in its absolute, but the combination of them are the things which actually get you to your destination, even in the complex mathematics. So in a similar way, simple and multiple linear regressions are also a basic building block in machine learning. And wherever you go, it does not matter, neural networks or any other different different sort of algorithms, you will find this linear regression appearing in one or the other way. It may be that combination of all those passing through a certain function may become your neural network or may become your AI inference engine. But still, these things are the most basic, and I am grateful that I have been given a chance to explain to the participants about the most basic and very important building block of any machine learning caricature. So to start with, so to begin with, I hope that my presentation is visible to all.
Yes, sir. It is visible, sir.
So today's topic is simple and multiple linear regression. So this is the agenda for today. We will go through what is artificial intelligence, what is regression, when do you need regression, what is linear regression, and how do you measure regression performance, and then what is simple linear regression and multiple linear regression. And then at the end, I will also explain and walk you through the code in the Jupyter notebook. So to begin with, what is AI? What is artificial intelligence? And is it something new or is it old? So to start with, AI is everywhere. It's a very old concept, perhaps of the 1960s or late 1950s. I mean, it is that old. So the Google Home or Alexa or autocorrect of your typing keyboard in your mobile, all sorts of stuff, all these are one kind of artificial intelligence. The most simple and basic artificial intelligence is your calculator. So what does it mean? Why is it the buzz word right now? So this is the guy in 1950s. He is the one who gave this definition or coined the term artificial intelligence. And he said that the science and engineering of making intelligent machines is called artificial intelligence. And this is the most simplest of its explanation. So AI is a broad concept of a machine being able to carry out tasks in a smart way. So even a simple CNC machine using PLCs are also a form of artificial intelligence. Maybe a simpler one, but it is still the artificial intelligence. Most complex form of AI would be using Amazon Alexa, using Google Home, the convolutional neural networks and machine vision, simultaneous localization and mapping. So my specialization is in simultaneous localization and mapping. So those kind of intelligent algorithms are the cutting edge form of AI. And every day there is a huge amount of research which is being published in there. Different kinds of neural networks, different combination of neural networks, different ensemble of neural networks. Deep learning is actually gaining ground right now just due to the advancement of the calculation hardware, specifically GPUs. So even on my PC right now, I have NVIDIA's GPU. So all these are useful when you have to do large amount of number crunching. And simple and multiple linear regression is the basic building block, where based on this you can build anything that you want, or you can learn any technology that you want. So what is AI? So AI is a constellation of technologies that enable machine to act with a higher level of intelligence, which emulate the human capabilities of sense, comprehend, and act. So this is the copybook of sort of a definition, but ultimately it is just saying that as we humans gather information through our senses, process it in our brain, and understand the information, and then act according to the information through our actuators, which may be our voice or our eyes or our hands or the way we express ourselves. Similarly, machines can also do the same thing. It is just that their actuators are different, their sensors are different, their brain is different. So similarly, uh, the art of making intelligent machines are called artificial intelligence in a simplest of the way. So according to the Accenture and Gartner, they say that many industries are aggressively investing in cognitive AI solutions, and the global forecast of the growth of the market of AI is 50.1% of compound annual growth rate, and it is stated that it will reach 57.6 billion US dollars worldwide in 2021. So why is it important? Because the money or the huge amounts of earning lies in applying artificial intelligence technologies to the state of the art problems. If we are able to solve real world problems, specifically problems pertaining to sustainable development goals using artificial intelligence, we are bound to succeed. We are bound to succeed as an organization, we are bound to succeed as a company, we are bound to succeed as a technical person, engineer, scientist, startup. It is just a matter of time how efficiently and how qualitatively you can apply the state of the art artificial intelligence techniques to solve the real world problems. If you can do that, you are bound to succeed. And there is also one list of United Nations Sustainable Development Goals which you can look at if you want to go in a bit of detail. So moving on. What is regression? So this is very important. What is regression? So regression analysis is one of the most important fields in statistics and machine learning, and there are many regression methods available, and linear regression is one of them. So regression searches for relationships among the variables. So for example, you can observe several employees of a same company and try to understand how their salaries depend on the features such as experience, level of education, role, city they work in, and so on. You know, how they have improved themselves, for example. So based on their profiling, it is possible to for us to actually determine a salary in a very transparent way. Similarly, using the current scenario, we can actually predict the fuel prices. So what is the fuel price given the current scenario? So this is also a kind of regression problem where you use your features, your state of the art data, and your available circumstances, and you try to appropriate a function which is mapping from the current situation or the circumstances towards uh, the prices of the fuel. So in a sense, this is also nearer to the probability theory and Markov hidden Markov models or Markov chain, but this is out of the gambit of this particular session. So, but this is good and important, I think, mathematical concept for the people who wants to build their career in data science and in machine learning and deep learning. So, by the way, the name of this fellow here, the person with the spec, is John McCarthy. John McCarthy is the guy who defined all this. So now, so this is a regression problem where data related to each employee represent one observation. The presumption is that the experience, education, role, city, or what or not, all the features that we defined are independent, while the salary or the target variable is the dependent feature on these inputs. So our target variable is our salary in this particular case. In some other case, it might be fuel price. In another case, it might be chances of a athlete performing better given the training routine, the practice routine, the eating habits, and the training of the particular athlete. So there are many interesting applications of such regression. One more is predicting the stock prices. Given the history of the stock prices, can we predict what could be the stock prices tomorrow, or maybe the day after tomorrow, or at the end of this particular year? So those are the typical applications of regression. So by the way, regression means predicting a number. When your target variable is continuous, when your target variable can take numerical value and it is continuous in nature, that particular problem is called regression. So this is one of the most fundamentals of machine learning. So generally in regression analysis, you consider some phenomenon of interest, maybe fuel price, maybe performance of an athlete, maybe chances or percentage chances of a person scoring 100 in the next cricket match, or the fuel price or stock price, and have number of observations, and each observation has two or more features. Now following the assumption that at least one of the features depends on the others, you can try and establish a relationship among them, and that particular phenomenon is called regression. So in other words, you need to find a function that maps some features or variables to others sufficiently well. The dependent features are called the dependent variables and outputs or responses, and the independent features are called the independent variables or inputs or the predictors. So actually machine learning and deep learning is all math. It is all about mathematics. So I consider engineers like myself or scientists as an applied mathematicians. We apply mathematical concept to a particular real world problem and try to solve it. So this is nothing but that is the same thing that we do in machine learning, in data science, in data analytics, in deep learning. We are doing the same thing. We are applying mathematical concepts to the real world problem. So it generally helps to have a clear fundamentals on mathematics and have a deeper knowledge of intuition as far as the mathematics is concerned, which is behind the machine learning. So we will go through mathematics, don't worry. I will explain the math of simple and multiple linear regression, and I'm very sure everyone will understand because it is the most simplest one. The regression problems, well, usually have one continuous and unbounded dependent variable, and the inputs, however, can be continuous, discrete, or even categorical data such as gender or nationality or brand and so on. So one particular problem that we worked when I was in Germany was for insurance firm BNP Paribas. So I mean the spelling tells it is BNP Paribas, but it is not BNP Paribas. It is a French firm and the name is BNP Paribas. It is from Paris. They are an insurance company, and the problem was that we had to predict whether a particular person will how much chance of the person is to actually claim an insurance, or there is how much chance of the company making a certain profit given a particular input variable at the first quarter of the year. So those kind of problems are typical of linear regression. Similarly, it is common practice now that we denote our outputs with y and inputs with x. If there are two or more independent variables, they can be represented as vector x, where this calligraphic x1 to xn are nothing but n number of inputs. So in a typical data frame, if you have seen a data frame, they are the columns. X1 to xn are the columns which become your input, and one particular column will become your output. That is a target variable, that is your y. This is how the normal linear regression means. But apart from the mathematics, it is important to intuitively understand the domain specific to which you are applying this particular regression tool. So for example, just a simple example of a cancer prediction algorithm, for example. So if we want to predict the chance of a person having cancer, it is suitable that you induce a systematic bias where false positive is okay. So even if the person does not have a cancer, and if the algorithm says the person has a cancer, there is still a chance that you will get it tested and you will get to know that person does not have a cancer and it was a false alarm. But in the real world problem, if there is a person with a cancer and algorithm predicts the person does not have a cancer, can prove to be fatal. It can actually cause a death. So pertaining to a specific domain for which you are applying a problem, the formulation of the problem, the target variables, the input variables, the dependencies, the correlation, everything will change. So based on the kind of domain for which you are using this tool, determines a lot about how you are going to use the tool and what you are going to put as a constraint on that. So it is of paramount importance to either have a domain expert with you, or try to understand as much as you can about the domain, and try to clearly formulate the objective function of what you are doing. If you have the clarity on that, then I think it will be important and easy to go through the rest of the process. So in the real world problem, this is how it works. Linear and simple multiple linear regressions are actually simple, and they are very powerful. I mean, I will always say, do not underestimate the power of simplicity. So in most of the world's problems, this suffice. Your linear regression will work best. And there are plenty of examples of as such. In the control theory, for example, the state feedback controller that you are trying to use, maybe linear quadratic regulator or linear quadratic Gaussian, is nothing but a linear regression. Yes, it is. It is nothing but a linear regression, but such a powerful tool. Similarly, extended Kalman filter. You are doing nothing, but you are just computing the Jacobi and trying to linearize your system at that particular point where you are trying to compute. So those are some of the high-tech applications of linear regression. I mean, linear regression is everywhere. I mean, linear parameter varying controller design, you will find it in prediction of the variables, specifically even in the space. For example, if there is a space rocket and rocket engine where I have to predict the temperature inside the burning chamber, can I put a sensor there? No, obviously not. It will just melt down. So what I do, I actually put a sensor outside the chamber, or the surface outside the chamber, and then based on that particular temperature which is sensed outside, I try to estimate what is the temperature inside, and based on that I will be able to calculate the thrust, I will be able to calculate the fuel intake, and I'll be able to govern my path of my rocket. So those are some of the applications of linear regression. So now moving on, when do you need linear regression? That's very important. When do you use it? How do you use it? Why it is important? So typically, you need linear regression or regression to answer whether and how some phenomenon influences the other, or how several variables are related. So for example, you can use it to determine if and to what extent the experience or gender impact the salaries. So regression is also useful when you want to forecast a response using a new set of predictors. For example, you could try to predict electricity consumption of a household for the next hour given, the outdoor temperature, the time of day, and number of residents in that particular household. Similarly, regression is used in many different fields. It is used in economy. What is the GDP? What is the GDP that you compute? It is nothing but a regression. Similarly, it is used in computer science, it is used in social sciences, and so on and so forth. So United Nations, UNESCO specifically, they along with WHO, they actually use linear regression to predict the chances of survival based on the geolocation in the poor or non-developed countries. So those are some of the important applications that you find in real life of linear regression or regression as a whole. So it is important, its importance rises every day with the availability of large amounts of data and increased awareness of the practical value of the data. So I mean, raw data is not that useful. I mean, it is as useful as sand or as useful as soil. But when you process it, when you clean it, when you annotate it, its value just jumps up. So regression is also useful in data cleaning, and in many applications people use regression for cleaning the data. Now moving on, that was all about the regression, and now we will start with our linear regression. So what do we mean by linear regression? So as the name suggests, it is regression which is linear in nature, in the simplest of its explanation. So linear regression is probably one of the most important and widely used regression techniques. It's among the simplest regression methods, and one of its main advantages is the ease of interpretation of the result. So because it is a linear, you can understand that the relationship between your input and output is represented by a line. And based on that, it gives you the larger degree of understanding of how the algorithm is working, the larger degree of intuition of how a particular input will impact the output. So to formulate the problem, what is the best practice? So when implementing linear regression, some dependent variable y or the output y on the set of independent variables x or input variables x, where r is the number of predictors or number of inputs. So you assume a linear relationship between y and your x, given that y is nothing but it is a linear sum of your feature vectors or of your input variables multiplied by a certain coefficient and maybe some error or some bias term. So this is what it is. The y is equal to beta naught plus beta 1 x1 plus up to plus beta r xr are nothing, but it is just saying that your y or your output variable is linearly affine in x. So these beta naught may be called as intercept, and beta 1 to beta r may be the slope pertaining to a particular input variable, and epsilon would be a certain drift or certain bias that you're trying to induce. So this equation is the regression equation, and beta naught to beta 1 to beta 2 beta 3 up to beta r are nothing but regression coefficients, as I told you, and epsilon is the random error or the drift, because be it any regression, you will never get 100% accuracy. There will always be that particular room for error. And if you want to model your uncertainty or you want to model your error, it is important that you take this into consideration in order to improve the performance of your overall linear regression algorithm. So linear regression calculates the estimators of the regression coefficients, or simply the predicted weights, denoted with b naught, b1 and up to br, and they define the estimated regression function f of x as b naught plus b1 x1 plus br xr. Now this function should capture the dependencies between input and output sufficiently well. Now I'm very sure some of you would have a question in mind, what the hell is beta, and now why this is small b, why it is changed all of a sudden. So this is nothing but simple mathematical notation, where here your beta and your x are vectors and or matrices, and here your b naught and your x is nothing but just a simple number or single number. This is the only difference. That is why the notation is changed. Otherwise, if you could see, the particular representation is quite similar. Only thing is, here we have taken random error epsilon into consideration, where here we are not calculating any error, or we are not taking any error into consideration. And this will specifically depend on the kind of problem you are applying this algorithm to. So based on that, it will determine whether you want to use epsilon or not, or if you want to include your epsilon in your beta naught. So there are multiple ways you can actually define your problem formulation. So the estimated or predicted response, which is nothing but f of xi for each observation I equal to 1 to n, should be as close as possible to the corresponding actual response of yi, and the difference between yi and fxi for all observations are called residuals or are called errors. Now the regression is about determining the best predicted weights, that is the weights corresponding to the smallest residuals. So what are you trying to do is you are trying to minimize this particular residual or the error. And this makes intuitive sense, right? If you want to predict something, you want to predict as closely or as accurately as you can. And that's what it is trying to do. It is a minimization problem where you are minimizing this particular error. Now, one more thing is why we are not using small y and instead we are using f of xi. The explanation is here, I think, where it says that your linear regression is nothing but it is a function which is trying to map your input to the output. So that is the reason we are denoting it as a function f and not y. I mean, they can be used interchangeably, so do not get confused by all this. And now moving on, to get the best weights, you usually minimize the sum of squared residuals. So for all observations, if your observations or your number of rows is 1 to n, then your sum of square residual is nothing but summation for all the residuals corresponding to a specific observation. And this makes intuitive sense, isn't it? This is nothing but a Euclidean distance. If anyone who is into applied maths or who is into pure maths will immediately recall that this is nothing but your Euclidean distance. If I do the square root of this, it will become my Euclidean distance or Euclidean norm or L2 norm maybe. So this is how we are minimizing our residual by minimizing the Euclidean distance. Now this approach is called the method of ordinary least squares. So whatever I have explained is called the method of ordinary least squares. Now regression performance is also important thing. It's fine that you define it and you use it, but how to evaluate the performance? What to do? So the variation of actual response is yi for all observations 1 to n. And again beware, the observation means the number of rows in your data frame, not the columns. It is the number of rows. So for the variation of actual responses for all the observation occurs partly due to the dependence on the predictors xi. So however, there is also an additional inherent variance of the output. The coefficient of determination, denoted as r square, or belonging to the real set or 2 by 2 real numbers plane, tells you which amount of variation in y can be explained by the dependence on x using the particular regression model. So the larger the two-dimensional real numbers plane indicates better fit and means that the model can better explanation or can explain better the variation of the output with different inputs. So if you have the r square value 1, that means that it corresponds to your sum of squared error to 0. But this will never happen. I mean, this doesn't happen normally. To be very honest, if this happens, that means you have done something wrong and try to redo the problem. If r square does not get to 1, it will always be asymptotically approaching 1. So it can be 0.99, 0.98, that is fine, but it cannot go to 1. I mean, if it is going to 1, that means you have done something remarkably great or something remarkably horrible. And in most cases, it will be some sort of error in some calculation. So that is to the perfect fit, since the values of predicted and actual responses fit completely to each other. Now, this is what the simple linear regression mean. I would like all of you to kindly focus on what this particular image is doing. So simple or single variate linear regression is the simplest case where you have only one input. So there are only two variables. There is one input variable and one output variable, and you want to find the relationship between the two of them. So the simplest version is just y is equal to x. This is what this particular line is saying. So the following figure will illustrate how the simple linear regression approach is, where this particular line that you are saying, the darker line, the black line, is estimated regression line, which is f of x equal to b naught plus b1x, which is nothing but y is equal to mx plus c, if you can see. So your b naught is your intercept and b1 is your slope. Now the circles, these particular circles or dots, are your actual response or your actual yi and the squared dots or red squares that you see are predicted by this particular line, and the dashed line will show you the residual or yi minus fxi that we actually previously talked about. So this is so what you want to do is you actually are trying to minimize the sum of all these residuals. You are just summing the square of all the residuals and you are trying to minimize them, and you are assuming that whichever line which gives you the best fit will have the least residuals or the most minimized or optimized residuals. So when implementing a simple linear regression, you typically start with a given set of input-output XY pairs. That is green circles that I have showed in this particular image. The green circles, the XY pairs, and these pairs are your observations. For example, the leftmost observation has the input 5 and the actual output response 5. The next one has x15 and y equal to 20, and so on and so forth. So this is what it is. This is x equal to 5, y equal to 5. This is y20, x equal to 15. And similarly, you can see the coordinates of all the dots. The estimated regression function, or the black line that I have showed here, has the equation f of x equal to b0 plus b1x. So your goal is to calculate the optimal values of the predicted weights b0 and b1 that minimize your sum of squared residual or SSR and determine the estimated regression function. The value of b0, also called the intercept, shows the point where the estimated regression line crosses the y-axis, and it is the value of the estimated response f of x for x equal to 0. So the value of b1 will determine the slope of the estimated regression line. So actually, based on the sign of b1, you can also figure out whether there is a positive relationship or negative relationship between your inputs and outputs. So if your b1 is positive, that means as you will increase your x or as your input increases, your output also increases with your input. So if your b1 is negative, it says if your input is increasing in nature, then your output will decrease accordingly. So the predictor responses or the red squares are the points on the regression line that correspond to the input values. So as I explained that, for example, x5 and the predicted response is 8.33. So this has to be actually 5, but it is somewhere down the line here. So it is 8.33. So your residue is 5 minus 8.33. So it is minus 3.33. That is your residue. Now the residuals, the vertical dashed gray lines, can be calculated as yi minus f of xi and yi minus b0 minus b1 xi, because that is what your f of xi is for all the observations. So they are the distances between the green circles and the red squares, and when you implement linear regression, you are actually trying to minimize these distances and make the red squares as close to the predicted green circles as possible. Now that was simple linear regression. Now what is multiple linear regression? What is the difference? Well, not much. I mean, there it was explicitly said that you only have the one input variable, which is this x, or only one feature vector. But when you are looking for multiple linear regression, these feature vectors are more. So you have more than one input, and then you are trying to establish a relationship between all these inputs and your output or the prediction function. That is the only most important difference. Otherwise, the mathematical concept of generality is the same for all. So multiple or multivariate linear regression is a case of linear regression with two or more independent variables. If there are just two independent variables, the estimated regression function is f of x1 x2 equal to b0 plus b1 x1 plus b2 x2. So it represents a regression plane in a three-dimensional space, and the goal of regression is to determine the values of the weights b0, b1, b2 such that this plane is as close and as possible to the actual responses and yield the minimum sum of squared residual. So the case of more than two variables is similar but more general. So the estimated regression function for more than two variables, maybe let's say n variables, is b0 plus b1 x1 plus up to plus bn xn. And there are n plus 1 weights because there is b0 plus your n weights for your n inputs to be determined when the number of inputs is n. So if you just try to estimate the complexity of this particular algorithm, I think some of you might have seen the O notations, the number of operations needed for executing the particular algorithm, which determines the complexity of the algorithm. Here it is quite straightforward. It is O n plus 1. That is what it is. If you have n number of inputs, the operations you need in order to carry out a successful regression is O n plus 1. So it is a very, I would say, linearly complicated algorithm. And that is why it does not require you to have a sophisticated computing hardware and high performance computing software. So let us look at the code in the Jupyter notebook. So here you could see the code in the Jupyter notebook, where simple linear regression is something which we are trying to do. So in simple linear regression, what we are trying to do is, this is our x, or this is the value of our x, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And accordingly, the corresponding y is your 1, 3, 2, 5, 7, 8, 8, 9, something. So what you're trying to do is trying to find out a function which takes x as an input and gives y or something nearer to the y. Moving on, this is what it should look like, and this is what it will be in a sense. So the task is to find the line which best fits the above scatter plot. So these are your actual inputs and output relationship, or your green circles as they say, as I showed you. Now you want to fit a line where a sum of squared residual is as less as possible. This is what you're trying to do. And our, because it is a simple linear regression, our problem will take this form of beta naught plus beta 1 xi, because there is only one input or one feature vector which is showed here. This is our one feature vector. So based on this, we are trying to determine the values of beta naught and beta 1, or b naught and b1. So this is how it will be, and your this epsilon will be maybe some of your errors that you're trying to minimize, and this is the sum of squared residual, or this is the residual that you are trying to minimize, and you are doing the corrective action by calculating or by taking in the residual in your linear regression. Because if you take your residual, it will actually act as a feedback, and it will try to correct the last regression value outputted by the function. So this is a kind of approach where you're trying to minimize your steady state error overall, if I strictly speak in the terminology of control systems. So the main aim is to actually minimize our cost function j, where it is nothing but summation of squared residuals, as you can see, divided by 2n. So that is the Euclidean distance, as I told you before. So moving on from, I hope the mathematics behind this is clear now, and we can move on. So for multiple linear regression, it is just that you will use mean, and you will subtract your mean from all the observation values, and then you try to minimize it, the sum of squared residual. So moving on, this is the function which I have implemented to calculate the cross deviation and deviation about the x. So xy is your cross deviation, xx is your deviation, and mx and my are mean of x and y respectively. And the calculating regression coefficients, your B1 and B0 is quite straightforward afterwards. So in a sense, this is the deviation, or maybe in strictly linear or bell-shaped curve term, it is the standard deviation. I think I hope all of you are aware of it. But why we need to calculate the cross deviation instead of just a deviation? And the main point is because we are predicting y based on our x. What we are trying to predict? We are trying to predict y based on our x. We do not have previous values of y, and that is the reason we are using cross deviation here in this particular line. But for our input, we have the history of our x, and based on that, we can actually calculate the deviation. That is why this is the cross deviation and this is the deviation. Similarly, you calculate the regression coefficients. Your B1 or your slope is nothing but cross deviation divided by your deviation, and that makes intuitive sense, isn't it? That does make intuitive sense. If you take the equation of slope, what does it mean? It just says y2 minus y1 upon x2 minus x1. So the change in y divided by the change in x. So the interpretation of this says how much variation of my y depend on the kind of variation I do on x. This is what it says, and that is what its interpretation is. So this is the function which will give us the coefficients, namely b0 and b1. This is the plotting function where I am actually plotting the regression line, and this is the main function where actually I am calling this function plot regression line, and I am giving my x and y. And you can see these are the values we saw at the start. These are the same values that we saw. This is the same values that we saw at the start. I am giving it here, and I am giving it as a numpy array. That is because of the technicalities and the technical reason. And b will be our estimated coefficient, which is nothing but b0 and b1, and where I'm printing them out, and then I'm plotting the regression line. So if I run this particular program, the program is running now. We need to wait until it finishes. So it has finished, and this is the value it is interpreting. Your b0 is your 1.2363 something something. So it is still the non-irrational number, just like pi. It just continues, but it is rounded off up to this point. And this is your slope, 1.1696969, and it will just continue up to that. And again, this is rounded off here. And this is your linear regression line that you are fitting, or a simple linear regression line that you are trying to fit. So the distance between the blue dot and the line will give you the sum of squared residuals. And as you can see, this is the best estimate or the best fit that you can get from your simple linear regression line. Now moving on, if we move towards multiple linear regression, now it attempts to model a relationship between two or more features and a response by fitting a linear regression and to observe the data. So clearly it is nothing but an extension of simple linear regression, and considering a data set with p features or independent variables or inputs, and one response or dependent variable, the data set contains n rows or observations. So our x of our feature matrix is nothing but a matrix of size n cross p, where x of ij denotes the values of your jth feature in the ith observation. That is what you are seeing here. So this is what the particular feature matrix is, where x11 is your first feature for the first observation, then your first feature for your pth observation, then second feature for first observation, and similarly so on and so forth. Similarly, the output y is the vector of size n, because there are total n feature vectors x1 to xn, and yi denotes the value of the response for the ith observation, where it is y1, y2 up to yn. So what are the fundamentals, or what is the regression line that you are actually trying to expect here? So it should be based on what we have seen so far, that b0, b1, x1, b2, xi2, similarly bp, xip, and it will continue for xi, all of the xi's.
Hello, sir.
This is what the kind of nature that you are trying to predict.
Madhav sir,
So based on this, Ji?
sorry to interrupt you. Sir, there is a request from YouTube participant as they are not able to see the screen that proper. Is it possible for you to increase the font, sir?
Okay, sure.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, sir.
No problem. So I hope now it is visible to all. And
Yes, sir. Yes,
let
sir.
us
This is
carry on.
better, sir.
Let us carry on. So now the linear model can be expressed in terms of matrices, which is nothing but y is equal to x beta plus epsilon. Your beta is your feature vectors, epsilon is your residuals for each and every observation or each and every independent variable. And what you are trying to do, we determine the estimate of b using least squares method. That's what it is. So this x transpose x inverse multiplied by x transpose y is nothing but the least squares that you are trying to predict. So the hat here or y hat denotes the estimation or estimated y, and when you will subtract this y hat from your original y, it will give you the residual. So based on this, I'm using it. So based on this, I'm using the same concept for multiple linear regression. And to start with, I'm importing matplotlib library just to plot the data, numpy for array operations, and I'm importing a data set from sklearn or scikit-learn library. That data set is the Boston data set or the Boston housing data set, where we need to predict the value of the houses based on the information given about that particular house. So it is a real estate property price estimator. And then I'm just defining the features here, where I'm taking all the input as x, our target variable as y, and then I'm importing train test split to put the to split my data. One important thing to notice here is keep your random state same. If you do not keep your random state same, you will not get the same output as I'm getting right now. So just for the purpose of reproducibility, it is important to set the seed correctly. So this is the best practice. Actually, it is best practice for all kind of deep learning or machine learning algorithms, because in profession or in professional practice, it is important that your model has some sort of a predictability in terms of functioning, and this random state provides us with it. This particular parameter or test size of 0.4 is nothing but actually I'm telling my train test split function that 60% of my data will be my x train and x test, and 40% of my data will be used for testing purpose. That is, so based on that, I'm just determining it in a very different manner. So 60% of the data in the given data frame is our train data, and 40% of the data is our test data. So your x train and y train will have the 60% of the values or observations, and your x test and y test will have the 40% of the observations. And how to split the observation is given through the random state here. Now I am creating a linear regression object because this is what I am trying to estimate, and then I am trying to fit the model on x train and y train. This is nothing but this is the particular function which is doing all this mathematics, which is doing all this entire thing again and again and again iteratively. So based on that, we are having this. So the same particular calculation will be done in this particular single line. This single line, this reg.fit or regression.fit. Now what I'm trying to do, I'm just publishing the coefficients of my linear regression model, and I'm publishing the variance score based on my x test and y test. Then I'm just plotting the residual error, and then I'm using the scatter plot, and based on that you will be able to see how closely we are predicting, and then we will see the performance, and we will be able to evaluate the performance of our model. So if I run this in a single line, as it is, as you can see here, it is running, and we need to wait until it is finished. So it is finished now, and this is what we are getting. So this is our test and train data. Our test data is green dot, our train data is blue dot. These are the coefficients that it has predicted, and this is the variance score of 0.72 that it has predicted. Because we have more features, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13, and that is the reason we have 13 coefficients, because we have 13 xn. So our n is 13, x1 up to x13, and this is how the graph is. So in the above example, we determine the accuracy score using explained variance score, and explained variance score is 1 minus variance of y minus y hat divided by variance of y, where y hat is the estimated target output, y is the correct target output or actual output, and where is the variance, the square of the standard deviation. So the best possible score is 1, so lower values are worse. So 0.72 is not that good, but it is okay in a sense, just for the demonstration purpose. So these are some of the relationships that we assume. So what the one thing you assume when you are applying linear regression is that your system or your target variable has a linear relationship with the input. So if it is this kind of relationship, it will work fine. But as you can see, there is a curvature here. There is some sort of exponential rise. If this kind of relationship is there, our model will not perform up to our expectations. Similarly, this is also a non-linear relationship. And then if we have this, it will not perform in a expected manner. Similarly, there are two important fundamentals that need to be cleared about. One is the homoscedasticity, which is this, and one is the heteroscedasticity. So homoscedasticity describes a situation in which the error term or the epsilon term, that is the noise or the random disturbance in the relationship between the independent variables and dependent variable, is the same across all the values of independent variables as shown in figure 1. But that is not the case most of the time. So here you see, if you just draw a line, you could see it is almost the same. The spread of these points are almost the same, and it is bounded by a parallel lines. But if you see here, there is a divergent spread, and based on that you could realize that there is heteroscedasticity in this particular data set. So what are the applications? So one important application is the trend line. A trend line represents a variation in some quantitative data with passage of time, like GDP, oil prices, I told you before. So these trends usually follow a linear relationship, and hence linear regression can be applied to predict future values. However, this method suffers from a lack of scientific validity in cases where other potential changes can affect the data. So similarly, in economics, linear regression is predominant empirical tool, and it is used to predict the consumption spending, fixed investment spending, inventory investment, purchases of a country's exports, spending on imports, and the demand to hold liquid assets, labor demand and labor supply. Similarly, in finance, the capital price asset model uses linear regression to analyze and quantify the systematic risks of an investment. Similarly, in biology, the linear regression is used to model causal relationships between parameters in biological systems. So, well, another example is given here, where if I can just directly skip to the code because the mathematics is clear. We are using the Boston housing prices data set here, and we are going to use the Python 3 and Jupyter Notebook as our environment, and Pandas library along with scikit-learn module. So let us understand the data set first. So these are our feature vectors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So 14 are our inputs, but 1 is our output, that is the price. And because our price is our output, the rest becomes our input. So among these 14, the price is our input and the rest is our output. That's why we have 13 attributes. And there are total 506 observations or 506 rows. as it can be seen here. Now let's have a quick look. So what does this first thing or the first column suggest? What is it? It says about the crime per capita. So it is the crime rate by town. Similarly, Zn is the proportion of residual land zoned for lots over 25,000 square feet. Indus is the proportion of non-retail business acres per town. Chas is the Charles River dummy variable. So if tracts are bounds river, then it is 1 if it is near the river, if it is 0 otherwise. Similarly, the pollution is measured here. So NOx, that is the nitrogen oxide concentration in ppm or pp 10 million parts per 10 million, that is. Similarly, RM is the average number of rooms per dwelling or per house. And then the age or the proportion of owner occupied units built before 1940. So whether there is some antique value to that house or not is also calculated here or given here as an input to determine the price. Then this thing is weighted mean of distances between 5 Boston employment centers, because this is the measurement of how near it is for a particular person to go to the job if the person is living in that particular house. Similarly, the red is index of accessibility to radial highways. So whether it is nearer to the highways or not is also taken care of. Then the tax, full value property tax rate per $10,000 is also given. And then PT ratio or pupil teacher ratio by town. So this is given about the data about the schools which is there nearer the house. Then this is the proportion of blacks by the town. How many percentage of the population is non-white is also given in this particular data set. Then the Elsted variable tells us about the lower status of the population percentage. And MEDV is the median value of owner occupied homes in thousands of dollars. And in this Python linear regression, we will train the model to predict the price based on given these features or data set. So now let us just import this is the Boston data set I have downloaded and I'm importing it now from the directory in my local machine. So let us run that, and it has been imported successfully. Now let us print our data first. What does it show? Okay, so there is one particular unrequired independent variable which is nothing but serial number. This 1 2 3 4 is serial number. So before we use this data frame, one thing we need to do is we need to drop this particular first column, and we are doing it in this particular line where I am dropping a column named unnamed 0, and x is equal to 1 will tell that it is a column, that this particular thing is a column, and I am trying to drop an entire column. So when I run this, as you can see, that particular serial number column is gone now. And we have this cleaned data frame, and this particular data frame has from 0 to 505, so total 506 rows and 14 columns or feature vectors. Now let us just print the Elsted and MEDV for our purpose, just to see how the top 5 what it is. So these are some of the values it is taking, and based on that, if the median value or the median price is our output, I am trying to find the relationship between this Elsted or the lower status or not and your MEDV, which is our output. And this is what this particular plot is showing. Now as we can see, the relationship is negative relationship. So the more the lower status population, the less the price, and that is quite intuitive, right? Nobody likes to stay in the area where you have the lower strata of population living. They want a safe place, they want a safe area where they can live, and based on that you have this particular negative relationship between the two variables. If I take LSTAT as input and MADB as our output, then it becomes a simple linear regression if I do that. So now let us take this as a data frame where your percentage population of lower status and your median value are your input and output respectively, and I'm assigning those here. Similarly, I'm doing the train test split here. As I can see, 80% of the data is my training data and only 20% of the data is my test data, and I'm setting the random seed 1 just because of the reproducibility purpose. Now the train test split is done, and let us see what is the train test split and what is the dimensions. So as you can see, the training data frame has 404 observations, where testing data frame has 102, and that is approximately 80% 20% split as we define here. And then let us feed the regression line. Now as we are fitting the regression line, there are certain variables that has been given here. First is copy x equal to true. Why do you need to copy your x? The only point when you need your copy x is it will actually copy your input variables without affecting your actual training data set. So when you need to keep it true. By default it is true as it is shown here. Then there is one more parameter that you can, or hyperparameter that you can define while defining the linear regression, that is fit intercept. Now if you keep it false, then it will actually try to center your line around 0 point and it will not keep the intercept. So by default it is true because you also want to take into consideration the intercept that is there in order to minimize your errors. Similarly, your n jobs is none here because you don't want to repeat or you don't want to have multiple epochs here. And similarly, you are not normalizing your input. That is why the normalization is false. Now if I print the intercept, it is 34.33, and if I put the slope or regression coefficient, it is minus 0.92, and that makes intuitive sense, isn't it? As we see from here, the relationship between your input and your output is negative. You expect the sign of your slope to be negative, and that's exactly what you get here. It is minus 0.92. So it is said that it is strongly linear and strongly negatively associated. So if you measure the angle of this particular regression line from your x-axis, it will be approximately around 45 degree. That's what it says. That is why the value is nearer to 1 and it is negative. Now because now you have your trained model ready, you want to actually put the prediction to test. So now we are giving our x test and we are just comparing it here, and then we are putting it in the y predict variable. So if I run this here, you should get the predicted line or the predicted outputs vector. So these are the f of xi in our equation. These are the predicted y's or predicted outputs. So if you go to the equation, you could realize what I am trying to mean by this. So this is our y f of xi. That is our predicted output or predicted outputs. So this here it is denoted as h of xi. This is our predicted output. This is our actual output. So your y predict is nothing but the vector which contains the values of your predicted outputs. Now moving on. This is the predicted output as I printed out. Now let us print the test output. So this is the test output, and you can see there is some, see this is 27.37, where for our actual it is 28.2. So it is nearer, it is nearby. So we assume or we expect that our linear regression model is quite good. So if I just print out the errors or mean absolute error, you get it is 5.07. Your mean squared error is 46.92. This is sum of squared error. This is sum of squared error, And if you take the root mean square error, oops, that's a spelling mistake here. It's root mean square. So if I take the root mean square error, this is what you get, 6.85, which is good. You want the error to be as nearer to 0 as possible, but if it is somewhere around 5, it is good. At least it is, I would say, usable. It is not that bad. Now, on the same data set, if we try to use the multiple linear regression, again, let me import the database. Again, we have this unwanted column of serial numbers, and we want to just throw it away, and we will throw it away. Then this is the train test split that we are trying to do. As you can see, again, we are dropping it. This is our y values, again 506 rows, but this time our x will be of 13 parameters or 13 feature vectors. So after I do the train test split and I take the shape of our train test input features, you could see here it is 13. Before it was 1, now it is 13. Why? Because it is multiple linear regression now. Before it was just 1, but now it is 13, as you can see here. So the number of rows still remains the same because it is 80-20 split, but now I'm setting the random state to 5 instead of 1. Just for the sake of reproducibility, you can actually make it as and when you want, but whatever you choose, try to keep the same in order to understand the reproducibility and the performance. Now, based on this, I'm trying to fit my linear regression model. And again, these are the main parameters, which is same as before. I'm trying to just put it. Okay, we are getting this. Now, because there are 13 input vectors, we will have the coefficients also 1 for each input vector. So this is what we are trying to do. And if I print it out, this is the attribute and this is the coefficient. So if you can see here, so as we can see, again, if you could see and understand the attributes, you can realize this is what is the making the intuitive sense. So if the per capita crime ratio is more, you are bound to have a lower price of your house. That is why this is negative sign. So more the crime, lesser the price of the house. And similarly, more the pollution, lesser the price of the house. See, you can see this. Similarly, more the old home or more the age of the house, lesser the relationship between the price and the house. Reason being that people wants to have a safe house, and if you have a very old house, you have repairs to do, and that is the reason people do not want to have it there. Similarly, this red says the easy access to the radial highways. Now, why it is having such a strong relationship with radial highways? It makes intuitive sense. If the person is working in a factory or a company which is there on the highway, the house which gives you the easier access to the highway will have the more price, and that is why you have this intuitive relationship. So if you look at these coefficients, you can actually make sense out of everything that you get here. So this is the overall thing. So even the pupil teacher ratio. So more the pupil teacher ratio, that means you have less number of teachers and more number of students. And that is why it is having such a strong negative relationship on the house price, because you want to give your children good schools, isn't it? You want to have your children going to the good schools. Similarly, if you go to the this RM thing, or the average number of rooms per dwelling, as you can see, there is a intuitive strong positive relationship, because more the number of rooms, more costly the house, isn't it? So that is the thing which is making sense here. So when you interpret the result, if you have a basic idea about the domain you are applying the problem, it will solve your problem, and it will make you have the intuitive understanding of how the linear model is working and predicting the outcomes. Now, again, if we want to use the predicted or our f of xi or our y hat, you can denote it the way you want. So our predicted output based on our x test. Let me run this. And now you want to measure the root mean square errors. So now this is what the error is. See, Now, one thing you can see here is the mean absolute error is quite less. Yes, it is 3.21. Mean square error is 20.86 and root mean square error is 4.5. Now, if you compare your multiple linear regression result with your simple linear regression result, you see multiple linear regression is performing better comparatively. Why? The only reason is because you have more number of inputs and you expect your data frame or your features to describe your output quite strongly. So the more the number of inputs you have, which has a strong relationship with your target, the better the accuracy of your regression line. That is what it is saying. And that is the reason why we have less errors when you compare it to the simple linear regression line or single variable linear regression line. So what did we learn here? We talked about the Python linear regression and regression best fit line and the coefficient of x. And towards the end, we have built two linear regression models, simple and linear, multiple linear regression. And we have also concluded that multiple linear regression for a same target variable is way better compared to the simple linear regression. So with this, I would like to I would like to finish with this, and I thank you all of you for listening to me with such patience. I hope whatever I have explained would be useful to you. You have understood the sense of it, you have understood the mathematics of it, and you have also understood the domain specific applications of it. This was my humble effort to bring my experience and my knowledge and try to share with all of you. I hope my presentation today or my session today was useful to you, and it will be useful even in the future, and you will find it applicable in your own problem solving. Thank you very much. Now I would like to I would like to ask the ma'am to for the conclusion of the session. I would ask for the question answer session to begin.
Multiple regression using Jupyter. Sir, we would be taking few questions.
Ji, ma'am. I request for the questions. Thank you.
Hello, Madhav sir.
Ji, ma'am.
Madhav sir, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sir, I can hear you, sir. I'm so sorry. Sir, there are few questions from few participants. Can we take those questions, sir?
Ji, please kindly carry on.
Okay, sir. Sir, first question is, what is the excess equals to 1 in drop function?
Drop function?
Sir, I guess you showed some plotting part in that during that time this question has been popped up in YouTube. what is the excess equals
Okay.
to 1 in drop function?
So, okay, x is equal to 1. Okay, got the point. So, when you are dropping a particular column, you need to specify your x is equal to 1. If you say x is equal to 0, it will drop a single row. But here I am trying to eliminate a particular column which is giving me the serial numbers of my observations, which is nothing but 1, 2, 3, 4 up to the number of rows that I am using. And this is very useless kind of input feature, and I do not want to use it. That was the reason I just used the command dot drop and then specify the name of the column followed by the notation that whatever I am trying to drop here is I want to drop the entire column and not just single row. So that is the reason I said x is equal to 1.
Okay, okay, okay. Thank you, sir. So the next question is how to interpret the result or get the inferences from this mathematical results.
So I think I have explained it quite comprehensively before, but in order to, I mean, because it has been asked again, I think I would like to keep it as short as I can right now. And that is that when you get the result, the first thing you are trying to do is you are trying to measure the accuracy or how accurate your linear regression model is to the past observation history. So based on that, the lesser the error or root mean square error or mean absolute error or mean squared error, better it is. So lesser the error, better the performance. So that is the overall interpretation. Otherwise, one more thing you can interpret is if a particular model of linear regression performs well on a particular specific problem, that means that a target variable has a strongly linear relationship between the with the feature vectors or the inputs. So that is the ultimate, I would say, the single liner in order to interpret your linear regression outputs.
Thank you so much, sir. The next question is how to apply regression to categorical data.
Well, to apply regression to the categorical data, first you need to convert your categorical data to the linear data. So if I can share my screen right now, so now my screen I think would be visible to you. So if I share my screen right now, kindly go to the inputs where I'm explaining my inputs. So here, this particular Charles River dummy variable, this particular variable, this is a categorical variable. This is like it is true if your house is near to the river, or it is false if it is not near to the river. So all the true values are represented by 1 and false values are represented by 0. So if you want to apply it or if you want to use this as an input, all you need to do is you need to convert it into the number. If you can do that, you will definitely be able to apply it. But if you want to, if your output variable is your regression, or if you want to, I mean, use a regression to classify a problem, I would advise you use logistic regression, because logistic regression mathematically is a regression, but it is used to actually apply this to the categorical data, where it will give you the probability of a particular class occurring.
Okay, okay, sir. So there are a few more questions. Should I?
Ji, continue.
Is regression for continuous data or discrete data? I mean to say, is regression is for a continuous data or discrete data?
It is for continuous data. Okay. Regression is for continuous data.
Okay, thank you, sir. The last question for the day, sir. Sir, there is a request like, can you explore more about absolute error, mean squared error, root mean squared error?
Sure, I can. Sure. So let me again share my screen with you all. So if we go down, yeah, this is it. So what is the mean absolute error, by the way? So as I can go back to what we were doing. I said we are minimizing the sum of squared errors. So sum of squared errors is true only for simple linear regression where you only have one variable. But if you have more than one variable, your mean absolute error is needed. What are we doing? We are not doing anything fancy. All we are trying to do is we are trying to minimize the error by just subtracting your y test or your original output from the predicted output, and you are taking the absolute value of it. It may be negative, it may be positive. The only thing that you are trying to do is you are doing it for all the observations and you are trying to predict it. So it is just that you are just taking the subtraction of your value from your y test. So if I can explain by one particular example, see our y test is 28.2. Focus on this. The first value of our y test or our actual true output for 307th observation is 28.2 and our predicted output is 27.37. Now if I take the subtraction from this 28.2 minus 27.37 and I do it for all the observations. So I do it for all the 102 rows here. Similarly, even my y test has 102 rows. See, so I'm doing subtraction for all and then I'm taking the mean of the error. So what I'm doing, I'm just taking the absolute error by just subtracting my y test from my y predict, and I'm taking the only the positive value or the magnitude. I'm not interested in the sign. And based on that, I will give my or I will have my mean absolute error. My mean squared error, for example, it is a little bit different. So this can be seen in mathematical terms as your L1 norm or your one matrix norm or vector norm. Here, this is the Euclidean distance. This is y test, y predict, the mean squared error. All I'm trying to do is I'm squaring it right now. So instead of having 28.2 minus 27.37, I'm doing 28.2 minus 27.37 whole square plus the second observation 27.69 minus 23.9 whole square and so on and so forth for all 102, and I am taking the mean of them. So I am dividing it by 102. After doing this, I get the mean squared error. That's why it is called mean squared error, because you are taking the mean of squared error. Here you are taking the mean of absolute error. Similarly, now if I take the square root of my mean squared error, I will give the root mean squared error. That is what this is. So 6.85 is nothing, but it is a square root of 46.99. Actually, you can verify it independently by doing something. I mean, I am not going to calculate 102 observations, but at least I can calculate the square root of it, where if I just say 46.99 and I just take square root of it, see it is 6.855 something. See, so if I take the entire value right now, we will get the result which is similar to this. So now if I take the square root, see, you can see this, right? 6.855276666731723. So it is the exact number as you can get. So mean squared error is nothing but the square root mean square error is nothing but square of your mean squared error, and your mean squared error is nothing but square of your residuals all summed together divided by the total number of observations, which is giving you the mean. So this is the explanation. I hope this is useful.
Thank you so much, sir. This was very elaborative explanation for the question asked by the participant. Sir, I'm so sorry. There is one last question I have got. Can I proceed with the question?
Yes. Why not? Yes.
Thank you. How does the predict function works?
Okay, that's a very good thing. How does a predict function works? So again, I have to share my screen for that. Sorry for the trouble, but I had to do that in order
No,
to
sir.
explain it properly.
Please.
So predict function. Yeah, that's a very good question. How does a predict function works? See, after we trained our model by regressor.fit, I have trained my model, right? And this is the coefficient of all the input variables. So what does this mean? This is my beta naught, beta 1, beta 2, all this, right? This is my betas. Now, once I have the linear regression model, which is nothing but a linear equation with the values in betas, all I'm trying to do is, instead of giving the x values of all these inputs, I'm giving it from the y test or x test, sorry. So the values of all these 13 feature vectors, right from the first observation to the end, from the x test is given to the already predicted linear regression model. So predicted linear regression model has the values for beta naught, beta 1 and all that. And this is what the betas, I mean, these are the coefficients and intercept and all. So after having this, it will just put the values of your x and it will calculate the y corresponding to that particular x. If you can actually look at the equation, there is one more interpretation of the equation that you get here, and that interpretation is your linear regression is nothing but a weighted sum, isn't it? This is a weighted sum. This is a weight attached to a particular sum, isn't it? So this is a weighted sum of your all the input vectors. That is what you're trying to do. So once you have the corresponding values of your coefficients and intercept and all you're trying to do is you are just trying to put the value from your test data set, which you have done here by train test split. You have split your x or your input data set into x train and x test. So you have the values here. You are just putting those values of all the feature vectors for multiple linear regression and just one value for simple linear regression. So you are putting the values for all the features that you have or all the input variables that you have, and then you are trying to compute your y or calculate your y. So this is what is done here in the predict function. And then you are storing it here by making it a data frame just to just for the easy to view. So if you can just add this, and if I just print it out just like that without doing anything, see, these are the predicted values. This is predicted based on the inputs given from the x test or the test data set, which is here. So this is your inputs. So the first line, when the first line entire thing is given into a linear regression model, it will output the 37.56. Similarly for the second line, and as you can see, our predicted y has 102 rows or 102 observations. Similarly, our x test also has 102 observations. So it is calculating for all the observations. So this is what the predict function does.
Thank you, Madhav sir. Madhav sir, there is two requests. One request is this, that participants would like to have PPT or reference material. Is it possible for you to share with us, sir?
Yeah, I'll look into it.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much. And sir, Ambuja ma'am is head of Department of Computer Science, University of Mumbai. Ma'am want to speak. So I will be unmuting ma'am. Okay.
Ji.
Yeah, thank you so much, Madhav sir. It was one of the very best talks on this topic, whichever so far I have come across. So I must say thanks to these organizers for inviting you and introducing you to us. The way you presented is just as every one of us as teachers should learn from you. The way this regression is, though it looks very fundamental and very elementary topics, making it to the students is not very easy thing. You have to have experience of research in that, but you made it so simple and still by maintaining the rigor. That is where I liked it very much. So I told them that I must thank him personally and on behalf of University of Mumbai and organizers, That is one. People have asked so many questions, and you answered very well. One of the very simple questions that I wanted to ask you is initially you showed that a regression model is built up and it explains around 78% or so. It's not very bad, though we
Hmm.
would like to go increase it.
Hmm.
Could you tell something about how one should look into this problem and uh, go for improvement? I mean, what are the ways to improve this figure?
So first of all, I'm deeply touched, and I'm thankful from the bottom of my heart for the kind words by the ma'am. I'm just a simple student of artificial intelligence. I consider myself as just a student because every day I'm learning new things. I'm participating in different collaborative projects. One of the projects because of which I get delayed today, and I apologize for being 10 minutes late today because I had a video call with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology guys. I'm working on one project with them in deep learning. It is specifically in the drug discovery domain. So that was the reason I got late today. So I apologize for that, and I'm thankful to the Ambuja ma'am for the kind words. And one thing I think you can do for improving the result is that we can actually try to engineer the features. So if I can just see the relationship between each input and output individually, and if I can find out that okay, there are certain inputs or features which are highly correlated to the output, and there are certain features which are not so correlated or not so strongly associated with the output. One thing I can do is I can try to normalize my numerical inputs, maybe from 0 to 1. It will be a continuous input, taking some float values from 0.00 to some 1.00. But one thing I can do is I can actually try to engineer my features. One more way to do it is actually take a combination of the two features, use some equation, and then just try to get that as an input vector or input feature. This is also one more way. So what we can do is instead we because I mean instead of doing that, we just take two features, we give some linear equation or some exponential equation or some sort of stuff, and we just use that as a additional input vector. So our input will increase from 13 to 14 maybe. These are one more way. There is one more another way is using optimization algorithms
Sir,
and
yeah,
setting the
may I
random seed
interrupt?
accordingly. So if you
Yeah.
set the random seed differently, you will see that you get different outcomes. So one thing what I do normally in my regression, I mean I haven't used it that much because I'm more into deep learning, but whatever limited exposure that I have with this, mostly what I do is I use random search or grid search for my hyperparameters. So the hyperparameters here, as we can see, is the optimization algorithms, the random state, the train test split percentage, the beta naught or the intercept, the similar way. So what I do is I just do the grid search for all. I compare the some 10,000 of the models. I just do some 10,000 or some large number of linear regressions. I compare the performance of all the models vis-a-vis mean absolute error, mean squared error, and root mean squared error. And based on the best performance that I get, I choose it. And I like to remind all the viewers, please be careful. If you have a best performance for training data set, that is as useless as uh, a empty thali. It is just as useless as that. What you want to get instead is you want to get a better performance on the testing data set, because if you are getting a better performance on a training data set, I'm very sure you are more likely to have overfit your model. So in order to prevent your overfitting, it is important that you concentrate on the performance of the test data set or the data set which is new to your model, because in training the data set is already seen, the model knows the data, but you do not want your model to mug up your data. You want your model to understand the linear relationship. It is similar to human mind. If you mug up the things, you only remember what you mug up. You cannot make out anything out of it. So if the question comes out of the syllabus, you are gone. So this is the same thing that happens with the regression models. So based on these 3-4 approaches, I usually try to improve the performance and try to make my model as generalized as possible and reduce the overfitting.
Yeah, it was a very wonderful answer. I hope that viewers will understand now what I had taken the theory of this thing. These all points were given to them and discussed to a detailed extent. And I had told them that when the person will come for talking about regression, he will explain all these things in detail with the examples. That is what you have done. I'm very much happy on that. Yeah, one small thing from my mind, I don't know whether it will be very useful to viewers or when you said we will add that as a next parameter, instead, what I would think is if we are anyway taking more parameters and forming a function of that, then obviously that function has implicitly taken care of the attributes. So can it not be the case like reduction of number of attributes? You take that function and reduce the parameters. Those columns can be removed and then also it should perform. Don't you think so?
Yes, it can, but it can be done when you have large number of features and you want to reduce the order of your model. So because I mean here it is just 13, so for that it does not matter. But yes, you can do that, and you should do that if you have a large number of feature space. Specifically, if you have 100 or 1000 columns, and then you are trying to fit a linear regression model, it is important that you try to reduce the number of features that you have, and there are multiple ways to do it. One way, as I told, is the forming some third variable using the two features. Another way is using singular value decomposition, and there are multiple different ways. One more way is using the correlation. So if the two features or two input features are correlated to each other, then you can eliminate one because the correlated feature is not giving the new information or not giving any useful new information that you need in order to predict the regression.
Yeah. And that's very right. And that's what means the interdependencies of the variables is also important, and that will help us to improve the performance. But even after that, yeah, what we are trying to model over here is just now when we take all the inputs as it is, they are, then it means all of them are in the linear relationship with each other. Instead, when we try to model their individual relationships and then linearization of that. So some higher order function we are trying to define in this business, and that's why the model will be more explanatory or better. Is that what you would like to say?
Yes, it is. But then if we are increasing the order of the model, then it no longer remains the linear regression. Then it can become the polynomial regression, I guess, because the order has changed.
Achha, thank you so much. We all learn all these things in the theory. The person like you when come and show us, and of course with all your credentials, when you are helping not only to the states but the India, and you are talking about international collaborations like none less than MIT. So we are really, really very much grateful to you and proud to feel yes, people like you like to come and contribute for our students and for us. So it's a very enriching experience. We shall definitely wait for your next talk in this series. And obviously, I would like to invite you more times to this university. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, ma'am, for your kind words. And I think I consider this as my duty that I also need to give back to the society what I have learned. So I try to package everything in a simple to understand way, or at least as much as I can to make it as simpler for you viewers or to beginners to understand, and try to introduce something new. Because multiple and linear regression, there are a lot of YouTube videos, there are a lot of blogs about it. Many people knows about it, and it's kind of a mediocre sort of a topic in a sense for an experienced person. But still, what I tried is that sorry, ma'am, sorry for the interruption. What I try is that I try to bring something new in that, some new interpretation, some new angle, some new ways of viewing the same thing. So in order to keep it interesting for the participants.
Yes.
So this was my humble try to do that, ma'am, and I hope that
you did
liked
it
it
very
and
much
all.
successfully, sir. In fact, I had talked with madam and told her that it looks like a very simple topic, but not like whatever is available in the book. That is not sufficient. People should explain it with the examples and the way you did. In fact, it is very good that I learned many things, and definitely I will try to implement it in my future teaching courses. And now it's lockdown, but I'm curious to meet you. Certainly, when you are here in Mumbai for some reason or the other, please make it a point to visit our department. We'd like to host you for some session or maybe just for a casual talk. Thank
Sure,
you.
ma'am. Actually, I have frequent visits to IIT Mumbai, but just due to the kind of circumstances right now, it has all been stopped. But I usually visit my friends at IIT Mumbai. So whenever I will come there, I will try to contact the college and
Yeah,
try to meet you.
yeah, please do come. University takes privilege in hosting learned people like you.
Thank you for the kind words, ma'am. I'm just a student of the topic, I say.
Everybody has to think in that way, but still the knowledge acquired as a student, that also is appreciable. As a student means, of course, when you say you obviously we all know that what level researcher you are. Otherwise, it is not, it doesn't come, sir. The way you spoke, that only tells us what level of depth you have reached to. So that's very great.
Thank you for the kind words, ma'am. I'm humbled by the kind words from you.
We'll meet, sir.
Ji.
So thank you, Srividya madam, and all my friends, Vrushali and Archana and whoever, Priyanka, whoever are there in the team.
Thank you so much, Ambuja ma'am, and thank you, Madhav sir. It was really a wonderful discussion. When two experts meet, the discussion happens something like this. So it was very wonderful discussion. And sir, Madhav sir, you explained all the concept and really gave so deeper insight and perspective. You really mentioned that the topic looks simple, but it is not simple. But you really made it simple, sir. You cleared our understanding, you enhanced our understanding on linear and multiple regression. We all are really very much impressed by your simplicity, your knowledge, your keen learning and research nature, sir.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for the kind words.
Thank you so much, sir. It is for everyone now. We would be starting our next session of the day after a 5-minute